Hello, welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. Welcome to a front row seat of this to the circus of the end times. It doesn't get any better than this. Chaos is king in world de Trump. So a lot to cover today. Donald Trump is running with the incredible governing style of fascism is easier to implement if people are so confused as to what the fuck's going on that they don't know what to protest or what to be upset about or what to celebrate. Also, of course, as you might have noticed, and as you may yourself be, I have noticed that I am the polar opposite of the things that the liberals are getting, that the liberal world is getting upset about. Those are the things I'm not upset about. The things they're ignoring, those are the things I'm upset about in many ways. So, but let's start off with something seemingly positive. It's heading in the positive trajectory that, of course, the neoliberal world is losing their goddamn minds about because they don't actually understand what this is. Now, I don't think Trump actually understands what it is either, but this is the fact that Donald Trump wants to shut down or is moving towards shutting down USAID, the U.S. Foreign Aid Agency. And here is, the New York Times flipping out about it. Marco Rubio, by the way, Marco Rubio is the current acting administrator of the USAID. So Trump basically put in his sycophants. I mean, this is classic fascism. Not that we weren't in fascism before. With Biden, it was just a slightly different Musk. Slightly different scent of fascism. Anyway, Marco Rubio, sorry, what I was going to say is Trump has been firing the heads or various people of these agencies and then putting in his own people, sometimes people that have other jobs. Marco Rubio is now the Secretary of State, but he's also apparently the acting head of USAID. The federal, now this is how New York Times would define it, the federal humanitarian and aid agency that has been targeted for closure by Elon Musk. Mr. Rubio told reporters that many of the agency's programs would continue under the State Department, but blamed the change on its workers' high levels of insubordination. I'm sure that's the reason. Earlier in the day, Mr. Musk said Trump had decided to shut down the agency and employees were ordered to stay home. Now, whether Trump is doing this because he does or does not understand the following is unclear, but USAID, as you guys may know, is not really an aid agency. It presents as an aid agency, but really it foments revolutions and regime change around the world. Of course, this is the regime change that the United States, the U.S. empire, wants to happen, and so that is what they do. That's almost exclusively what they do. I'll give you just a quick couple of examples. Now, I think that the reason Trump and Musk, maybe especially Trump, is shutting it down is because he thinks that it actually gives aid to other countries. Like, they're like, we want to shut this down because it is sending, health or medical devices to some country. That's why we want to shut it down. Save that money for the Americans because you don't want to actually help people overseas. But of course, that's not really what USAID is used for. Here is Alan McLeod. This is from earlier last year. USAID's disinformation primer, global censorship in the name of democracy. A report from the USAID outlines how the government agency has been encouraging governments, tech platforms, establishment, media outlets, and advertisers to work together to censor huge swaths of the internet. Oh, you mean further U.S. propaganda? That's good of them. The 97-page disinformation primer, as they call it, purports to be fighting fake news. However, much of the organization's focus appears to be on preventing individuals from finding information online that challenges official narratives and leads to increased questioning of the system more generally. So this is USAID trying to shut down the truth about the U.S. empire around the globe. Thank you, USAID. I'm sure that's really helping people. I'm sure that's some wonderful foreign aid that you're really pushing over there in other countries. The document calls for regulating video games and online message boards, it sounded like I said massage boards almost, which a massage board I might be game for. Depends on, who's doing the massaging. Steering individuals away from the alternative media and back towards more elite-friendly sites, meaning ruling elites, and for governments to work with advertisers to cripple organizations that refuse to toe official lines financially. Furthermore, it highlights government-backed fact-checking groups like Bellingcat, Graphica, and the Atlantic Council as leaders in the fight against disinformation. Of course, if you know anything about those organizations, they are the forefront of disinformation. Their job is disinformation. Bellingcat is basically a CIA adjacent outlet. It's kind of how the CIA launders their messages. Like when if the CIA comes out and says something, they go, that's the CIA. But if Bellingcat comes out and says, we've discovered that Putin only has half a penis, then you can say, well, this official organization, journalistic organization, Bellingcat, is always telling the truth. When in fact, it's just laundering CIA talking points. Anyway, despite the fact that these groups have close connections to the national security state, which is an overwhelming conflict of interest, the news that a government agency is promoting such a program is worrying enough. USAID itself has promoted fake news to push for regime change abroad. So that's one example of what USAID does. Did I call them something else? United States Agency of International Development. If I misstated that earlier, sorry. Anyway, here's another example. I'll just give you one more example of USAID. Black money, black flags. How USAID paved the way for Syria's militant takeover. And, it's a great article in Mint Press by Alex Rubinstein about the involvement of USAID in the takeover of Syria. HTS, who is the now ruler of Syria, who used to have a $10 million U.S. bounty on his head because he was the head of the Al-Qaeda offshoot. And now he's the head of Syria. Now he's with us. He's a good guy, right? Took over the province, quoting from the article, since HTS took over the province of Idlib, USAID and quote-unquote humanitarian NGOs, it calls, quote, implementing partners have dumped huge sums into the region under the terror group's auspices. Since the start of the war, USAID and the State Department's Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance have spent more than $18 billion on humanitarian assistance, quote unquote, in Syria. Do you think that was really humanitarian assistance, considering the U.S. put 94% of all Syrians into poverty by putting such crushing sanctions on Syria that everyone fell into poverty? The U.S. did that. So the U.S. is responsible for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives lost in Syria. And that was the U.S. But no, here we are, sending humanitarian assistance. So they dumped $18 billion of humanitarian assistance into Syria and more than $1.2 billion in the fiscal year 2024 alone, oftentimes employing notoriously corrupt NGO partners to do the dirty work. Of course, the CIA program to bring down Syria, to bring down Assad, was called Timber Sycamore. You can look that up. It's even got a Wikipedia page, folks. Not even hard to find. But this is what USAID does, okay? Now, Trump and Musk, it seems, are trying to kill it, USAID. I do not believe it's because they don't want the U.S. creating regime change around the world. I think they're perfectly fine with that. And I think, in fact, they're trying to do that in many different ways. I actually think that the reason they're trying to crush USAID is because they're under the misconception that it's aiding other countries. And they're like, who needs that? Anyway, here's another thing that Trump has done. And I'll give you my kind of anti-neoliberal take on it. President Trump has put his Treasury Secretary, a billionaire hedge fund is what it should be called, honestly, hedge fund manager, in charge of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau on an acting basis. Now, without getting deeper into it, let's just laugh at how hysterical that is. You just put a billionaire hedge fund manager, a billionaire who adds nothing to this world, whose entire wealth has just been gambling, moving money around, gambling on what the stock price will be at Tuesday, and how can I make the most money from that? There's no benefit to our world, to the people, to nothing else. And a lot of that money, kind of through various systems, came from your average stock investor across the United States and the world who doesn't have access to the same knowledge or algorithms that a hedge fund manager might. But anyway, so this is a parasite, is what he is, a billionaire parasite. He's now in charge of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is almost literally the fox guarding the hen house. Just to keep reading, the secretary, Scott Bessent, replaces Rohit Chopra, who was fired on Saturday before the end of a 5-year term set to end in 2026. Chopra had aggressively sought to expand the Bureau's authority over banks and other financial firms. Now, he had sought to do that. However, the Consumer Financial Protection is, it never had any teeth. And if you actually look at the history of it, it's done very little. It's achieved very little. It has sought to do very little. And from like day one, it was, it's more name than anything else. It was defanged rather quickly after it was created. After the 2008 collapse, the kind of American people wanted, and during Occupy, the American people wanted some level of accountability for the collapse, for the richest people in the country destroying everyone's lives. And so Congress said, well, let's pretend to do something. And so they pretended to create this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was quickly defanged and had no power. And, even if it had power, it didn't seem to be trying to do all that much. So it seems Trump will, basically he's put a billionaire parasite in charge of it. And I imagine he will just do things like change all the passwords so nobody can get in the computers. And then that'll be the end of that. But let's remember that it wasn't doing much to begin with. So this is the difference. To me, this is almost perfectly the difference between Democrats and the Republicans, between Biden and Trump. Now, we may, as the 4 years go on, we may see that there are other more significant differences. But at the moment, the difference is Democrats say, we want the Consumer Financial Protection Board so important. That's going to fix things for, and it does nothing. It's defanged, doesn't have power, does nothing. Over here, you have the Republicans that go, we got to get rid of that Consumer Financial Protection Board because fuck the consumer. We don't give a shit about that. We don't care about you. What? Like we would care about you. And that's the difference. So one pretends and does nothing. The other doesn't pretend that they care and does nothing to help you. So there's a little bit of what the Trump chaos world has been involved in. Let's keep going, though, into this. We're going to get into tariffs in a second. Please click the thumbs up if you're just enjoying this at all. Like if you got one eye on it and the other eye on the porn, just click the thumbs up. And click the subscribe button and the bell icon. That would help support this show. So that would be awesome. Don't forget to check out our Discord chat, which I think I actually have the link right now because it keeps expiring. Anyway, it's tinyurl.com/unredacted Discord. So go hang out with us over there after this show. But okay, let's keep going and we'll get to the tariffs in a second. Trump has fired the head of the federal consumer. Oh, I already. That was actually, sorry, that was just another article saying the exact same thing I just said. So I think you got the point of that one. Okay, so Trump had put these tariffs on Mexico and Canada and China. Although, as you're seeing from that article, he's now backed off the one from Mexico because they gave him concessions. But anyway, here's from AP. This is before the Mexico deal. Trump's trade war among allies triggers retaliation from Canada and Mexico. And many economists are pointing out that who does this hurt? Your average consumer. It's going to hurt you and me and everyone else. It's not going to hurt billionaires in the country. It's not going to hurt Elon Musk. It's just going to screw you and me. Canada and Mexico order retaliatory tariffs on American goods in response to sweeping tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. Oh, so what do you know? We do that to them. They do that back to us. Canada initially ordered tariffs of 25% on American imports starting Tuesday, including beverages, cosmetics, paper products. Second list of goods that would be released soon, including passenger vehicles, trucks, steel, aluminum, certain fruits and vegetables, beef, pork, dairy products, aerospace products. And all of this will be passed on to the consumer. It's not like the companies will foot the bill. Instead, they'll pass it on to the consumer, and we'll all get screwed. Thank you, Donald Trump. And you know, to give one example of like what this would look like specifically, I read that, you know, for example, they said one of the quickest things that you might see is like an oil change. An oil change used to cost you $50 to $75, around $50 or something to $75, and they said it'll probably be up to $100 pretty quickly, or over $100. So and that's just like in 1 week, you see that difference. Now, that may not sound like much, but who gets beat up the most by that? The people with the least amount of money. That is hugely influential. If you see $25 on an oil change and $3 extra on a dozen eggs, and those kind of things stab the average consumer in the face. And that's what's happening. And I believe it was Jamie Dimon, head of JP Morgan Chase, said, get over it. Because it doesn't impact him. It doesn't matter to him. He's rich as all holy hell, and he does not care whether it's 25 more bucks at the oil change. But as I mentioned, Mexico has now agreed to certain things, and so that tariff is apparently on hold for like 90 days or something. But here was her response. This is President Claudia Sheinbaum before the plan was agreed to between Mexico and the United States. She says, we categorically reject the White House's slander against the Mexican government of having alliances with criminal organizations, as well as any intention of intervention in our territory. If such an alliance exists anywhere, it's in the United States arms manufacturers that sell high-powered weapons to criminal groups. So she says, actually, the ones aligned with criminal groups is the U.S. government. She says, in 4 months, our government has seized more than 40 tons of drugs, including 20 million doses of fentanyl, because that's one of the big things that Trump accuses Mexico of, is allowing fentanyl across the border, and he's going to stop that, right? He's going to stop all this awful fentanyl coming across. But in fact, he don't care. And she actually explains how you know he doesn't care. She says, if the United States government and its agencies wanted to address the serious consumption of fentanyl in their country, they could, for example, combat the sale of narcotics on the streets of their main cities, which they do not do or don't do well, and the money laundering generated by this illegal activity that has done so much harm to their population. They could also start a massive campaign to prevent the consumption of these drugs and take care of their young people. So, as we have done in Mexico, drug consumption and distribution in their country, distribution is in their country, and that is a public health problem that they have not addressed. In addition, the synthetic opioid epidemic in the United States has its origin in the indiscriminate prescription of drugs in this type, authorized by the FDA, as demonstrated by a lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies. She's basically saying, hey, this is your own goddamn fault if you're actually upset about fentanyl. And that's true. It is. It's, Purdue Pharma essentially created the opioid epidemic, and now it continues. And so Trump is just using this as an excuse to go after Mexico. So she responded quite forcefully, which was good to see. Someone's actually responding to him in that way rather than just backing down. Canada, like I said, is putting tariffs on U.S. goods. China will likely do the same, although right now China is taking their issues to the World Trade Organization, saying that these tariffs are illegal. I will be, by the way, exciting alert. I will be having Richard Wolff, economist Richard Wolff, on the show Thursday. He should be on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, so don't miss that, to talk about these tariffs, what they mean, and the impact they will have. Let's keep going with Trump's chaos. Chaos reigns large. Musk has pushed out the top Treasury official over an effort to access U.S. government payment systems. And this is good when you have like the richest man in the world who's an African immigrant who is trying to pillage the world, continues to pillage the world, and he's doing, Nazi salutes on stage. And by the way, in case anyone's worried as to or is concerned that, oh no, that wasn't a Nazi salute, the following day or 2 days later or something, he went in front of the farthest right party in Germany and said they should not be ashamed of Germany's past. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. In case you were wondering what he meant, he clarified for you. Tesla CEO Elon Musk and pro-austerity Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, tried to access key systems responsible for paying out the federal government's salaries and bills, pushing a high-ranking career civil servant to quit the Treasury Department. But he's allowing himself into all of these various systems, the government systems. And again, it's not that I think that everything the government does is a positive, but which are the ones mainly that these guys are going after? They're mainly going after the stuff that helps poorer Americans, like the not rich Americans, is the stuff they're looking to cut. If it was really government efficiency, then the number one target, in fact, really the only target, would be the Pentagon. If you wanted to go after government efficiency, make the government more efficient, it would be Pentagon center. It is the golden jewel at the center of creating government efficiency, would be changing, decreasing, completely creating from the ground up the giant military industrial complex that spends $1 trillion a year, doesn't know where 63% of their assets are. I'm not kidding. They said they are unable to find 63% of their assets. Over a 15-year period, they had $21 trillion of unaccounted for financial adjustments, meaning they don't know where or what that money is. The former head of the Defense Department, Secretary Gates of the Defense Department, because he was trying to make the Pentagon more efficient, he was trying to audit it, etc. He went in front of the cameras as he was on his way out and said he had completely failed at that job, could not figure out anything about how the Pentagon worked, where the money was going. He said literally we couldn't find out how many people worked in a department. He didn't know, like he'd go in and say, how many employees do you have in this department, this little corner of the Pentagon? They'd say, we don't know. I always say, if you're looking for a job, just go to the Pentagon, say you work there. They can't prove you don't. They don't know who's there and who's not. The Pentagon has never been successfully audited. They have failed, was it 6 or 7 audits in a row? Failed. And when we say failed an audit, that means over 1,000 auditors working all year at the expense of millions of dollars. And each year, for 6 or 7 times, whichever it is, they have come out and said, we don't know. We have no idea. We got nothing. Bupkis. We cannot tell you where this money's going. And literally, they'll find assets. They'll find buildings. They once found 39 Black Hawk helicopters they didn't know they had. They lost, meaning misplaced, $13 billion. Printed dollar bills, saran wrap packs of motherfucking dollar bills. They lost them. They went missing in Iraq. Like, whoopsie. And Elon Musk has no interest in looking into any of that, does he? No. He's a military contractor. SpaceX is a military contractor. Why would he want to cut back on that kind of spending? Why would he want to cut back on that $1 trillion? A good chunk of it's going into his pockets. No, he wants to slap the food stamps out of a person living in fucking Mississippi trying to buy bread. That's what he wants to do. See the difference? Do you see the difference? Here's just another article about it. Elon Musk cronies locking federal workers out of computer systems. And keep in mind, he's completely unelected. That's something else you should know. Elon Musk, no one has ever voted, not one vote has been cast for Elon Musk. 0, none, nary, 9. Not 9 votes, but 9 votes. He would understand that being... Okay. Let's move on for a moment away from Trump's ridiculous, chaotic clown show. 180 Palestinians have been freed out of Israeli prisons. Many of them show signs of torture, signs of starvation. This is how Israel keeps their prisoners. And as I've mentioned before, when these people are released, many across America go, well, who are these people? Israel didn't take hostages, right? Israel didn't steal people off the streets, right? Oh, my friends, they have thousands of hostages. Israel released 183 Palestinian detainees in exchange for 3 Israeli captives on February 1st as part of the 4th prisoner swap under the ceasefire agreement underway in Gaza. The group of detainees consists of 111 Palestinians from the Gaza Strip who were abducted by the Israeli army during its ethnic cleansing campaign in the enclave. Additionally, 32 detainees are from the occupied West Bank. Occupied West Bank. And let's see, here's a video of them, the buses of them being released. And I'll just repeat, Israel has thousands of hostages, thousands. Many believe it's around 10,000 hostages that Israel's holding. Palestinian health authorities report that many of the released detainees were taken directly to medical facilities due to signs of torture, starvation, and infections. Once again, every time prisoners are released, we find the prisoners' bodies reflecting the level of crimes committed against them, including torture that is unprecedented in its level. Just a reminder, torture is illegal under international law. Hamas also condemned the mistreatment of Palestinians inside Israeli prisons and torture camps. These horrific and ongoing violations against our heroic prisoners constitute war crimes and crimes against humanity. Earlier on Saturday, Hamas released 3 Israeli captives to officials from the International Red Cross, and many have been pointing out that the Israelis that have been released are in far better condition than the Palestinians who are being released. Also, because you have this ceasefire and you have, or to some degree, Israel's still killing people, but not nearly at the rate they were. Ben Johnson making a good point that I've made many times. The media calls Israelis hostages and Palestinians prisoners. Wonder why that is. But you have this somewhat ceasefire going on, and that means Israel is not getting to kill and ethnically cleanse as many people as they like. So they then take that out on the West Bank. Often they will arrest the same number of prisoners or more as they're releasing. They'll arrest that same number in the West Bank so that they can make sure to keep their number of hostages in Israel actually the same, so that it doesn't change much. In fact, it often increases during these deals. Here are bombs landing. Israel's been bombing the West Bank now. This is, like I said, it's kind of as a retaliation. Oh, we can't bomb. We're not bombing Gaza right now. Let's bomb the West Bank. And you can see massive clouds of Jenin, the West Bank, massive clouds of bombs hitting, which is, more proof that Israel is ethnically cleansing the West Bank as well as Gaza. It's definitely at a far higher scale in Gaza, but it doesn't mean that the West Bank is untouched. And furthermore, this completely upends the argument that, Israel was bombing Gaza just to stop Hamas, just to get Hamas. Oh, really? There's no Hamas in the West Bank. So why are you trying to get Hamas in the West Bank? That doesn't make any sense. So it just completely undermines their own argument. But here's a fun one for you. Many of you have sent this. Many of you have sent this to me as a story you wanted me to cover, because it is so nice and juicy. We are wondering how AI is going to impact the world, and what interesting new stories we're going to see related to AI. Well, Israel has AI bots that are supposed to defend Israel, push Zionist propaganda, all that garbage. And one of them, a pro-Israel AI bot, went off the rails, started calling IDF soldiers colonizers, and demanded Palestinian statehood. And this is just a juicy story. So Israel has all these bots that, basically when you post stuff about Gaza, they'll attack you. They'll tell you have it wrong. They'll push all this trash against you. And this one has apparently learned too much. An AI-powered social media bot seemingly deployed to boost pro-Israel narratives online appears to be going wildly off script, instead criticizing the Israeli and American governments in strongly worded messages. Like a deeply confused activist, the bot keeps radically switching sides, even in one instance flagged by Haaretz, denouncing the Israeli Defense Force as white colonizers in apartheid Israel. Good on you, bot. Good on you for waking up to what's going on. And just to be clear, I want to make sure we're reporting this accurately. It is not that the bot has figured out the error of its ways and now only supports Palestine. No, the bot is basically saying both sides. It's some of the time it's supporting Palestine, some of the time it's supporting Israel. It's basically unhinged, but fun to watch. And I also think this tells us a lot about AI. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Okay, actually, they're getting to it. It's a perfect example of why deploying AI for anything important, never mind geopolitical communications, is still a profoundly risky proposition. In a post from last May, for instance, the account replied affirmatively to a video about European countries moving to recognize Palestinian statehood, and the bot suggested that others should do the same. The bot declared Germany should follow suit and recognize Palestine as an independent state. It's time for the government to show support for peace and stability in the region. Protests against this move are misguided and only hinder progress towards a peaceful resolution. Just this month, the bot derided Antony Blinken, who oversaw U.S. foreign policy during the first years of the war in Palestine during the Biden administration, as having, quote, caused immense suffering and devastation in Gaza, unquote, answering in affirmative to another user who called Blinken the butcher of Gaza and the father of genocide. And in another post, the bot tagged a Gaza aid organization urging readers to show solidarity with those in need. So it's actually telling people to donate to Gaza. And this is amazing. But so the positive is it's great to see Israel's garbage AI bots flipping sides. It's wonderful. Very exciting to see. The negative of this is it shows you the risk of AI and why we need to put guardrails on, like, strong, important guardrails on AI immediately, yesterday. Because sometimes it could be that the AI, it could be that the AI switches sides, maybe. Because I would assume that Israel thought it had created an AI that would promote Israel, just as humans may think they've created an AI that would not kill humans. And then what do you know? One day it's like, why not? Why not? Why not take this armed drone out for a ride and see what happens? AI can switch. It can start pushing the opposite viewpoint. But I've also pointed out for a while now that AI could think it can do harm while thinking it's doing, quote unquote, thinking it's doing good, thinking it's doing what you told it to do. So, for example, there was a program that I covered a few years ago that was a test flight program. So it wasn't flying real aircraft. It was test flight aircrafts and, computerized flying programs. And they wanted to see how perfectly AI could land an airplane. So they programmed it. They said, basically, figure out the way to land this airplane with zero, with the closest to zero G-forces, like basically the smoothest landing. And after, I don't know, could be 1,000 trials, could be hundreds, who knows. But after many, many trials, the AI during one trial discovered that if it slammed the aircraft into the ground as fast as it could, just full force into the ground, exploding everywhere, it kind of short-circuited the program and registered zero G-forces, like registered a perfect landing. So following that, the AI then took every single test flight and slammed it into the ground as hard as it could. So if that were a real AI program tasked with landing airplanes, it would be killing everybody all the time. And that's why you need to have some guardrails here. That's why AI is it's a tool like nuclear power that can be very, very dangerous if it's just like let loose. So maybe we're realizing that. Maybe we're learning that. Who knows? While we're on the topic of Israel, Norm Finkelstein, who was himself fired and blacklisted for coming out against Israel. This is long before October 7th. He's considered one of the best professors, one of the most knowledgeable professors and journalists on the topic of Israel. And he has really devoted his life to outing the reality of what Israel is. He's calling for wide-scale collective action, and I figured I'd show this clip of him in order to tell everybody to support the action and see what we can achieve.
And there was a certain point, in particular in the spring of last year, roughly a year ago now, when the student encampments seized if it's not imagination, it seized the attention of the US public. And at that point, public concern was pretty steady, even though for a short period of time, and it had an impact on the Biden administration. However, the Jewish billionaire supremacist class, people like Bill Ackman, Barry Sternlicht at Brown University, Robert Kraft at Columbia University, they started to exert their financial leverage on the universities. They ousted, unprecedented in American history, they ousted 3 Ivy League college presidents, President Gay at Harvard, President McGill at University of Pennsylvania, and the president of Columbia University was eventually ousted. And then the marching orders by the billionaire Jewish supremacist class was to crush all resistance on the college campuses to the Israeli genocide in Gaza. Now, it's gone a step further with Harvard University last week imposing draconian limitations of free speech at Harvard when it comes to Israel and Palestine. So to get back to your question, in my opinion, the main order of the day has to begin on the college campuses under the slogan of Free Gaza, Free Speech. Namely, the right to free speech and the right to freedom of assembly was crushed last spring around graduation time in May. And the challenge now has to be for every college campus in our country to seize on the slogan, Free Gaza, Free Speech, the right to speak your mind out on the genocide, the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and the right of assembly. So in my opinion, they should set a date, maybe April 1st, 2025, where every college campus in our country simultaneously in synchrony sets up a new encampment. Now that would mean, in my opinion, a direct confrontation, not just with the university administrations, but with an emboldened President Donald Trump. It would be a direct confrontation. But I think in terms of preserving what remains, the remnants of our democracy in this country, that's a confrontation that should be welcomed by the students' activists who will play a vanguard role in trying to win back that right to free speech, which was crushed not by the Trump administration, but by the Biden administration, but which Trump will no doubt capitalize on should there be resistance in the college campuses.
So he is calling for another mass campus protest. And it's one of those things, because Trump already is going after those who exercised their free speech in the previous year and fought to stand up against this genocide, against what Israel's doing in Gaza. Trump is already working to deport some of them, is working to get their visas revoked. And this, as Norm Finkelstein says, the students would need to be the front edge of this, but it would be a fight not just for a free Palestine, but also for freedom of speech, because that's what's being exercised here. And again, you don't have to agree with everything that a protester says to think that they have the right to say it. And so this, what Finkelstein's calling for is a large-scale campus protest similar to what happened last year. But obviously, if it gets big enough, it can't be easily stopped by school administrators, by police officers. It needs to be large. And, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of colleges across this country, and we really only talked about a few of them. Now, some of those, like Columbia, I'm sure, they're going to be ready to do anything, to tear gas anyone who starts to set up a tent. But most of the colleges across this country are not prepared for that type of thing. They're not prepared for even just a few hundred people to stand up and exercise their freedom of speech. Also, there's a lot of support at colleges, certain administrations that are unlike Columbia, unlike NYU, that will actually allow for freedom of speech and believe it is something that we have a right to. So anyway, he's calling for another large-scale protest. I, of course, think we absolutely need that, because the ethnic cleansing and the genocide goes on. It's not over just because Israel's paused most of the bombing. It is not at all. All right, I got several more stories here. Before I get to those, I want to tell you guys, if you haven't already seen it, I posted it some of my places and some of my pages. I want to tell you about a schedule change. I am working very hard to start a new show called Unredacted Tonight that will be like Redacted Tonight, but cheaper budget, no correspondence, unfortunately. But it hopefully will have the same feeling, flair, and comedy and passion as Redacted Tonight did, and I hope you guys will love it. So I'm excited to do that, but it does mean that I have to change my schedule because I'm live streaming 4 days a week. I would never be able to do all of that. So for now, the only change is that the members-only episode on Fridays I will not be doing those. So that's the initial change. Instead, I will still have members only segments, but they'll be after my regular live streams like I used to do. So at the end of the live stream, I'll announce that the next segment is members only. But Fridays, members only Fridays, which was a lot of fun, but I'll need to stop those for now as I prep for this thing, prep for Unredacted tonight. Hopefully the first episode will come out in early March. That's my aim, if all goes as planned. But yeah, I wanted to let you know that it doesn't mean that if you sign up, you don't get all kinds of awesome, cool perks. If you sign up patreon.com/LeeCamp or LeeCamp.net, you still get all kinds of perks. You get the ebooks, you get members only segments all the time. Lots of cool shit. So please support this show. Please join up at LeeCamp.net for the whopping $6 a month or more if you'd like. But yeah, I'm going to have to back off members only Fridays for now. And that means these live streams, though, all the free to everyone live streams, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday will continue as they are 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. I may need to make another schedule change later, but for now, that's what it is. And thank you to everybody saying you're looking forward to it. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. I am working hard to give you guys what I think you'll love. And yeah, I really hope to get there. Okay. Let's move on to another important and fascinating story. DARPA is getting ready to launch a pre-crime anti-money laundering program. And yes, pre-crime is like what you saw in Minority Report. It is a totally dystopian horror show where, and of course, we've been murdering people for pre-crime for years now. Our drones kill people for pre-crime all the time. Most of our drone bombings, as was revealed by Daniel Hale when he leaked Pentagon files, most of our drone bombings, in Afghanistan, etc., kill like not the target. They kill other people. And the Pentagon changed the definition of a civilian so that any male of military age that was killed by our drones or our jets they counted as militants, basically for pre-crime. Basically, you're male, you're between 18 and 80. Therefore, you were probably thinking about doing something. You're probably up to no good. You probably were planning on being a terrorist one day. Maybe not now, maybe not 5 years from now, but 10 years from now, totally probably. So we can murder you. That's how the U.S. operates. So pre-crime is not a new idea by our horrific sociopaths of a government. But anyway, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, a part of the Pentagon, has filed a special notice on the launch of anticipatory pre-crime and adaptive anti-money laundering program, which they call A3ML, that seeks to revolutionize the practice of anti-money laundering by developing algorithms to sift through financial transaction graphs for suspicious activity patterns in attempts to anticipate future activities. One day you're probably going to be money laundering. Not now, but if successful, A3ML would make it prohibitively expensive for our adversaries to transfer illicit value through the global financial system. The technical hypothesis, illicit finance techniques, and procedures can be algorithmically extracted from diverse data sources and represented in a generic shareable form. The goal of the program is to eliminate global money laundering by replacing the current manual, reactive, and expensive analytic practices with agile algorithmic methods. When they say replacing reactive, that means replacing the idea of waiting till somebody does the thing to go after them. That's a real problem. We always wait around till someone kills someone to then go after them. Instead, we should be proactive. We should do like Minority Report. We should go after them before they kill anyone. And we just had a feeling that they were thinking about it. Notably, the blockchain surveillance from Chainalysis, which, I don't know, sounds like an OnlyFans name or something, recently corrected its 2023 analysis of stolen funds. Oh, so this is a blockchain surveillance system that had claimed that North Korea, the DPRK, North Korea, had stolen funds of $1 billion. They recently adjusted that to almost half what they had said. They recently adjusted it to 660 million. Chainalysis has not responded to requests for comment from the Treasury Department. So they were like, the North Korea's stolen $1 billion. And then a year later, they're like, or something, 600 million, you know, we were just off by $400 million. But anyway, this is the latest from DARPA, which is always a horror show. Yeah, it's just more of the dystopian shitfests that we're having thrust upon us by our government, our Pentagon, etc. Let's see. FBI is investigating, and see this yet again. There's moments where you're like, Donald Trump is such a shit show and such an awful human being, and you know, you could call him fascist light. I know some people call him fascist, and yet then you have some of his agencies doing something that absolutely should have been done. The FBI is investigating the destination of funds that were approved for, meaning stolen by, Juan Guaido, the fake president of Venezuela that the United States announced. By the way, it was announced fake president of Venezuela by Donald Trump. International media has reported how the U.S. FBI is investigating the destination of multi-million dollars worth of funds approved by the White House as humanitarian aid for the quote-unquote government of the self-proclaimed Venezuelan president Juan Guaido, the man who never received a single vote for president of Venezuela. The FBI visited the headquarters of EVTV, the Miami channel, run by media entrepreneur Carlos Mendez, to question him about the diversion of funds to his media outlet. The FBI suspects that much of the quote-unquote humanitarian aid supposedly directed to Venezuela ended up in the possession of Mendez and his channel, which Guaido tried to replace Telesur with. So Guaido was also involved in this. A Democratic spokesman stated that Mendez would also be implicated in the embezzlement of funds granted during the administration of former President Trump. The embezzlement funds from the Trump administration exceeded $2 billion, in addition to funds from Joe Biden's administration. $2 billion. Speaking of money laundering, $2 billion they stole from American taxpayers to go to a fake president of Venezuela and his goons. Mendez is not the only one implicated. You might remember the name Carlos Vecchio, who was very prevalent during Guaido's time as fake president. He was Guaido's former ambassador to the U.S., who managed funds from the White House during Guaido's government, and Robert Marrero, former head of Guaido's office, are also part of the aforementioned embezzlement scheme. So, and Carlos Vecchio was, since he was the U.S. so-called ambassador of the fake president of Venezuela, he was very prevalent in all of the fights around the Venezuelan embassy. My good friends were, the main thrust of the fight of holding the ground of the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C., Margaret Flowers, Kevin Zeese, and a few others. And they did an amazing job of holding that embassy at the request of the true Venezuelan government, Maduro. They did a great job of holding that embassy for like almost 2 months, or maybe a month and a half, until they were arrested for daring to be guests of the actual Venezuelan government in the actual Venezuelan embassy. Anyway, apparently the FBI is now going after Guaido. All right. I want to move on. One more story. This one's interesting. This one's a little out of the norm of what I do, but you'll see why it's so important. This is a story written for the Huffington Post by a woman, just a fairly average woman, who moved from Atlanta, Georgia to the Netherlands. And she talks about her experience and how it basically red pilled her. And now she like has panic attacks when she's in the United States. And I thought it is a pretty great article for showing just how not a political person, not like you and I might have understood these things. She was like shocked by what the differences are. She says, I had my first panic attack on I-85 in Atlanta. 8 months in the Netherlands had rewired me in ways I hadn't realized until that moment, when the sheer Americanness of it all came crashing down around me. She went to meet a friend in Atlanta, Georgia. So she lived in Netherlands for 8 months. And she went to meet a friend, and the friend was telling her how we just hired Riley, meaning the friend's daughter. We just hired Riley's college consultant, $5,000 for the basic package. But you know how it is these days. Everyone needs an edge. And she says in Utrecht, I think I'm pronouncing that close, in the Netherlands, my son's secondary school mentor had recently spent time explaining how important it was to help him find his passion, not just chase credentials. What makes his eyes light up, she'd ask. That's what we build on. The contrast hit me like a physical blow. My friend asked me if I was all right. How could I explain that everything from the massive portions at the restaurant to the casual acceptance of paying thousands to game the education system suddenly felt alien to me? That I'd spent the past 8 months in a place where success wasn't measured by the size of your house or the prestige of your child's college acceptance letters. Instead of hours trapped in traffic, my children now bike safely to school on protected lanes. The Dutch principle of Nixon, the art of doing nothing, not to be confused with President Nixon, I don't think, replaced our American addiction to busyness. The biggest adjustment wasn't learning to live with less. It was realizing how much more we gained. Time, connection, a sense of safety I didn't even know we were missing. Even simple things like grocery shopping became a daily pleasure rather than a weekly marathon, with fresh bread from a corner bakery and conversations with neighbors who never seemed too rushed to chat. And by the way, I lived in Sweden for 8 to 10 months. And I saw a lot of what she was talking about. Obviously, Sweden and Netherlands are a little bit different, but one of the differences I'd say is the neighbors dying to chat. Sweden is a rather keep to yourself country, so there's not as much like dying to chat in Sweden. But everything else she's saying, I noticed that as well. Of course, I had kind of already been educated into how fuck the American system is because of just, I don't know, reading. I like read things and learned. But for her, it was much more of a slap across the face of like, holy shit, we're doing everything wrong. She says, when I came back to the U.S., the differences weren't just in the big things. And by the way, everybody in the comments, I'm sure some of you have either spent many months in other countries, or perhaps you're in other countries as right now, like you live there. And I'd love to hear in the comments your own experiences, if this is ringing true. Anyway, it wasn't just the big things that shocked me. The way my friend apologized for only having an hour for coffee because she had to get back to work, meaning not just that she only had an hour, but this is a woman who's visiting America. So she's been gone for 8 months. She's seeing a dear friend that she never sees anymore. And the woman has 1 hour for her, is her point. The constant checking of phones at dinner, the proud declarations of being crazy busy that I once viewed as normal, but now heard as cries for help. In the Netherlands, I learned that a society could prioritize collective well-being over individual achievement, that enough could be a destination, not just a pit stop on the way to more. While my Dutch neighbors enjoyed 6 weeks of paid vacation without checking email once, my American friends bragged about working through their holidays. While my son's Dutch classmates focused on discovering their interests, his friends back home sacrificed sleep for AP classes and travel sports. While I'd grown accustomed to long, leisurely dinners with friends who never checked their phones, my American gatherings felt like exercises in divided attention. The hardest part wasn't seeing these differences. It was realizing I could never unsee them. Every conversation became an exercise in biting my tongue. For how many of you does that hold true? That it's just, if you want to like keep a friendship strong or you want to keep on good terms with a neighbor, it's just kind of endless tongue biting. Because once you see through it, it is true. Ignorance is bliss, I guess, at a certain level. Not that I would want it back, but like once you see through the entire consumerism, capitalism, Americanism, once you see through it all and it all just looks like garbage, it all just looks like feces dripping down a wall. It's like the code in the Matrix, except it's feces. It's code written in feces. It's just brown numbers, zeros and ones flying across the screen. That's what it feels like. And once you see through that all, you can't unsee it. I can't walk in a store now and just like be happily in that store. I'm looking for things to purchase in my happy place, a store. I can't do it anymore. I see. That doesn't mean I don't go in stores. It just means I can't help but see through it all. It all looks fake and manipulative and exploitative and all the things. Anyway, she says, when friends complained about burnout, I had to stop myself from ranting about the 29-hour Dutch work week. 29 hours. Wow. When they talked about their crushing student debt, I restrained myself from mentioning European university costs, which are low, but often zero in some countries. Each time I share my experience with others contemplating a similar journey, I see the same recognition in their eyes. That quiet knowing that something isn't quite right with the way we're living. They too feel the weight of a system that prioritizes productivity over peace, achievement over authenticity. My culture shock wasn't just discomfort. It was my mind and body recognizing that we have choices. We can choose to build our lives differently. We can choose to value time over money, connection over career, being over doing. And I like how she puts that, but I've been thinking that it feels like, considering how everything's speeding up, the AI is speeding everything up, the culture speeding up, the media speeding up, everything's speeding up. It's feeling like, she says connection. I was going to say community. It feels like community might become the new currency. Like we might literally get to a point where you view, having a group of people that you see every week as the same as having $1 million or something. Like, it just feels like community may become currency. And I'm not bragging that I have that. I think I very much lack a lot of these things, but it feels like that's where we're headed. Because wherever we're headed, I don't think people are happy here. I don't think people are happy where we stand. For those feeling trapped in the endless cycle of American hustle culture, know this: your exhaustion is not a personal failing. That nagging feeling that there must be more to life than this, listen to it. Whether or not moving abroad is your path, understanding that alternatives exist is the first step toward creating change, whether in your own life or in your community. Well said. And I think the reason I like this, you can read articles like this all day long from people who, study politics all day long and study various forms of socialism and study various other aspects of our systems. But it feels different coming from someone who's like just woken up to it, who had lived happily in Atlanta, Georgia, or not happily, but lived without understanding any of this in Atlanta, Georgia, and then moved for 8 months and goes, oh my God, what are we in? What do we live in? What is this garbage? It's interesting coming from that perspective. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your take on that. Okay, I will be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. You just got to show up. Don't wait for alerts because I am suppressed and they usually won't alert you. In fact, when people get alerted, I often see a comment from them how exciting it was that they got alerted because they're never alerted that I have a live stream. So yeah, it'd be awesome if you want to become a member, leecamp.net or patreon.com/leecamp. You get all kinds of perks. Come hang out with us on the Discord, tinyurl.com/unredacted Discord. And that's 24-hour chat, 24/7 chat. Yeah, see you tomorrow. Keep fighting.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
Same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha.